Well, tonight we talk about the Lakers in Boston. But before we jump into that, is Gino a hero in Seattle? And was Wilson really being for real when he said it didn't bother him that they booed him there? Clearly, his face told a different story. Also, Kenny and the Young Bucks to WWE, it could possibly happen. All this and more on Sports Sounds.
You ain't nothing but a hound dog, the crying.
Into right, well hit. Back at the wall. It's off the wall. 1 run scores.
I still gotta get a shorter damn intro than that. Everybody knows Mr. Hicks.
What's up, guys?
As you seen there, we'll go ahead and talk about it. We're not going to dive too deep into baseball right away, but as you've seen, Albert has hit 697. He's marching on to 400. I mean, 400. Yeah.
7.
Yeah, Tommy.
Yeah, you are.
Yeah, 400 home runs. Yeah, he's marching on to 700 home runs. I will be in Busch Stadium tomorrow night versus the Milwaukee Brewers. Here's the hoping that he's in the lineup, and here's the hoping I get to see him smack one. So,
yeah, man, every inch, every game is history now. With how close will he get? Because I think everybody's noticing the 700 is very doable. A lot of people had to eat their words there, so I hope he does something tomorrow. Pretty cool, and you guys get to witness it live. That'll be awesome.
Him or Yachty could be doing pretty good tomorrow. It'd be nice to see both of them do it, have a good game, since it's definitely going to be the last one that we'll go to with those two in it, because we're probably not going to go to no more games this year other than this one. These were free tickets, that's why we're going to it.
Right.
You already know it's going to be a hella packed there tomorrow with the home run chase going on and the playoff chase going on and all that kind of stuff. So there's probably going to be a pretty good atmosphere there tomorrow night. I hope so. Let's go ahead and dive into some college football real quick. I can tell you this. So when we talked about college football last week, there was no way in shape and form did me and you think that these scores was going to end up the way they did.
No.
Lots of upsets. So let's go ahead and talk about the big elephant in the room, shall we? Speaking of elephants, ranked number 1 elephant, Alabama took on Texas. They barely escaped Texas 22-19. Alabama does drop in the polls this week by 1. Georgia is your new number 1 in the top 25. So they've pointed out also, I was listening to someone, I think it was the Fox podcast or something, where he was pointing out that Alabama for years now has struggled on the road against teams. I can tell you this, the Alabama team that I've seen in that Texas game, they can't win the national championship.
Absolutely not. It was so mistake. I think Nick Saban is used to as close as perfect on the field, as close as perfect as you can get. And that was the farthest thing. Will Anderson, I believe, I'd have to look it back up, but while I watched, I seen 3 penalties of his alone, and he's arguably the best or most NBA pro ready or NFL pro ready. Sorry, looking at the wall in the background there. But the most NFL pro ready, and a lot of people have him. It's a little too early to talk top prospect, but all these college football analysts, they're like, oh, he's a top pick, top 3. He alone had 3 or 4 penalties that killed him each time. 2 15-yarders, it was ridiculous. Just mental mistakes, and that's what they were doing. And I'm like, and this ain't knocking Texas because they were super talented, but I believe if Ewers was still in there, that quarterback, the initial drive that he had, I believe he was like 8 for 10 or something like that. I think if he stays in, it's a different story because they were proving it hard for him just in that first drive. He was proving why he's the talk of the town in Austin, Texas for this year. But now he's going to be out for 6 weeks. That kind of hurts. But at the same time, they had him on the ropes the whole game, literally till.
I don't know what Texas has done to the football guys that makes them jinx them every time they play Alabama with this quarterback situation. But
and it happened with didn't it happen with the backup a little bit? Like he didn't have to come out or anything, but I could have swore he was limping around or something. I'm like,
Yeah, Texas quarterback was limping a lot, so he was not 100% himself. I mean,
yeah,
he was in pretty bad shape, but he did play last year, so that gave him a little bit of an edge. So
yeah, that's the thing, man. I kind of feel like too. Obviously, this sparked the whole Saban Alabama dynasty in 2010. You know, he went his first national championship 2009-2010 season, and Colt McCoy obviously being there. Texas hasn't been any good since. They haven't been the Longhorns that we're used to from 20 years ago, and even a little after that. So this was a huge game for them, and it wouldn't shock me. You mentioned Alabama going back a spot. Texas actually got into the top 25. They got, I think they're 21 or something like that, 21-19. So that was the score. But I mean, they're very close to that. So kudos to them, man. I hate them, but they're doing a lot of good stuff, a lot of recruiting. And it seemed like they definitely got into Saban and company's head there.
Yeah, it's very uncharacteristic for Saban to have that many penalties. I've never seen a football team of his look that horrible. You also had let's see, Ohio State did play. They killed Arkansas State 45-12. University of Miami gets a win 37 over USM. Arkansas 44. South Carolina 30. That was a pretty good game. Arkansas is going to be a force to be reckoned with in the SEC pretty soon.
I believe so too. I believe that was a good game. That was like a marquee 4:00 game or whatever time it was. It was good. Well,
you also got Wake Forest who gets a win over Vandy 45-25. North Carolina State gets a win. You also have Utah who hangs 73 on SUU. Marshall, your team Marshall gets the win over number 8 Notre Dame 26-21. I couldn't have been happier for Marshall to get that win. I hate Notre Dame. I hate how high they're always ranked. A lot of upsets happened this weekend. Speaking of the biggest upset that's talk of the town, Appalachian State beats number 6 Texas A&M 17-14. This is only the second time that a Appalachian State team has beat a top-ranked team besides Michigan. When they went to the Big House and beat those guys. Now, we've seen that they hung with North Carolina the week before. They hung up 60 points and almost beat North Carolina, and North Carolina pulled it out. So this is where we're going to talk about some of this IRL stuff. This stuff is really starting to balance. If you everybody seems to think that the finger was really pointing at Jimbo when Saban said what he said, but what he was really pointing the finger at was this. This is what Saban fears. This is what these big schools and big coaches fear, is that the playing field is going to be too leveled out, and they are not going to get these wins every time. And when you got a Texas A&M school who there is not a guy in that locker room thought before they went out there that they was going to lose to Appalachian State. Not in College Station.
I believe the same with Notre Dame. I sincerely believe that. Whether they did start off losing, they lost last week, but we lose it. Like they scheduled the Sun Belt Conference for a reason. It's an easy win. They got to pay them.
I have been pointed out that it's Appalachian State is such the team that's scheduled to get a guaranteed win that even in the Long Richard, they even mention it when he's getting info from fucking Adam Sandler. And he said, well, we always would pick some kind of slack 2 team like Appalachian State, kick the shit out of them, get our confidence up. Yeah. That's what was so funny about that. And now Appalachian State, I was happy for him, man. I love it when some little underdog like that comes in there and upsets someone.
Their game day this weekend. The game day crew will be in Boone, North Carolina, Appalachian State, but I'm psyched for them too. Them and Marshall again, and there was another. I want to say Georgia Southern, maybe. It's a Sun Belt Conference. They beat Nebraska and got Scott Frost fired already.
You know what's so bad about that is Nebraska, I remember when they hired Scott and how proud they was because Scott played there, and Scott was so happy to have that job.
Nebraska. Yeah.
Yeah, and just look how the downward spiral that's went to. He's not had a good season since he's been there. He should have just stayed where he was.
UCF, he was building a Gus. I mean, they got Gus, or what was the guy, Josh Heupel, but still they haven't been the same either. You can see, and he was really doing something at UCF, and with Gus, I mean, it's not the same kind of, and Josh Heupel, either guy. That was like a match made in heaven. I wonder about that too. If some of these teams have just caught on to the way Frost and Chip Kelly under that Chip Kelly discipleship tree or whatever. If they've just caught on to what these guys can do, and they're like, "Oh, we're gonna snuff it out every time," because Nebraska never got going. They haven't been good since I was young.
The 90s is when I remember them dominating. That's when they were dominating, was the 90s. Also, another game that made you probably smile in the final overtime. Tennessee gets the win over number 17 Pittsburgh.
Oh, I thought you were going to mention the other overtime game.
34-27. Also, the final between Wisconsin and Washington. Washington upsets Wisconsin 17-14. Wisconsin is just one of those teams that every year they got them ranked somewhere in the top 25, and then they end up choking out. I don't know what the hell happens to them.
They're a weird team. They got the running backs. They got the offensive line. Tight ends are pretty good. Quarterback's decent enough to win, and they dropped like 2 or 3 that they should have, could have won, and that's what keeps them out of the national playoff title picture. It looks like every single year. So I agree that was crazy. But yeah, the Pitt and Tennessee game. Tennessee, that's a big. Pitt's obviously, I think they're phonies being in the top 25. I said that because West Virginia hung with them. We see where they're at now. And we really should have won that game. Again, if you're asking any WVU fan, you got to go for fourth down. But no, they actually jumped up to like 17 or something, and they're still, I believe, they're like 23rd in the top 25. So that's a big win for Tennessee. And then we had other games like Kentucky of Florida, like the SEC East.
That is 2 years in a row that Bob has got that win over Florida.
Yeah, that's very cool, man. That's Mark. Mark Stoops.
Yeah, Mark.
Right?
Why did I say Bob? Hey, I said Bob, didn't I? Bob Stoops.
And that what we just did the Bear Bryant. I think he passed Bear Bryant. He either passed.
He did. He passed it. He passed him.
And we were talking about why don't Kentucky show Bear a little bit more love now. It's kind of crazy that it happened that week of all weeks, but funny too,
Also, in 2 overtimes, you had Texas Tech end up getting the win over number 25 Houston, 33-30. You also had Ole Miss look good against Clark. I know it's Clark, but they still hung 59 points in that Lane Kiffin offense. You also have Oklahoma, who wins 33-3 over Kent. Let's see here. Mississippi gets a win. I just said that, dumbass. Next up, let's talk about this game right here. BYU and Baylor, 2 overtimes. BYU gets the win, 26-20 over Baylor. Was Baylor overhyped this year, or?
I'm curious with a lot of things. I watched that one live, and it was late. I think it ended 2 p.m. on the East Coast. So, and me and you're in Central Time, I believe, right? I'm in Eastern, so about 1 a.m. your time. That's late for a football game. Baylor is completely, how the Big 12 conference is all in your face, air raid offense. We're going to hang 75. It's going to be 81-79 final score. No defense. We ain't worried about that. They're the total opposite of that this year. They just grinded the run out. I don't even think a pass went for more than 25, 30 yards. And they knew that. BYU knew that they couldn't pass after such a time in the game. And they just started loading the box, and Baylor, lucky for them, it went to 2 overtimes because BYU should have won like 4 times before then. They got lucky. They missed 2 kicks that would have won. And again, I think Baylor winds up in overtime. I think they turned it over, and BYU had already scored or got their kick or whatever. But Baylor looked terrible to me. I'm worried about, I'm in the Big 12. I don't know if West Virginia can win a Big 12 game, seriously. But with this weekend, Oklahoma's or Texas would be the real only hope to even be announced to be in that playoff spot. Maybe Oklahoma State, but Big 12 looks so weak right now, man. They look pitiful.
Well, next week we also got BYU versus Oregon, number 12 at number 25. You're also going to have Penn State at Auburn.
Yeah, that's the big one.
You're also going to have Toledo and Ohio State and a few others. Missouri, Arkansas State, Texas Tech, North Carolina State, Michigan State and Washington, South Florida and Florida. Pittsburgh dropped down to 23. They'll be taking on Western Michigan. Oh, right here's going to be a good one. Number 13, Miami, and number 24, Texas A&M. Texas A&M has got to wake up in that game and end up getting the better of Miami, or there might be another coach on his way out the door.
That's what I want to ask you. This is my one question for you, because you know how the SEC is. Jimbo went from, man, I can't wait to watch Alabama and Texas A&M play Saban versus Jimbo, to he's done if he loses, maybe 2 or 3 conference games or the next game at Miami. How much leeway do you think Jimbo has now? Is he the guy in the SEC to be on the hot seat?
Oh, that's a tough one.
Or could you see a divorce, I guess, with Texas A&M and Jimbo Fisher? I mean, it's one game, but you know how the SEC especially.
Honestly, I think Brian Kelly's more on the hot seat than.
I'm glad. I do too, because I feel like Brian Kelly is in. I love Brian. I
think Texas A&M is a little bit more tolerable to bullshit than LSU is. LSU will
win,
if you were supposed to be a big coach and come in there and you didn't do nothing right away, they're probably going to fire your ass and find someone else. Texas A&M is going to give you probably a year or two to figure it out or whatever. So I think that's the difference between the two teams. I know when Texas and Oklahoma comes in there, it's going to be crazy, man.
We're going to see a lot of. I worry already with, and again, I could care less. But I mean, for their job's sake, Oklahoma, they're looking good right now, but they ain't stepped in with the big boys yet. Texas. No.
They're going to find out real quick that playing that brutal ass road schedule is what's so hard in the SEC. It's not the fact that you're playing the teams down here. You're going to play them on the road so much.
Yeah, and the environments too.
SEC, those environments are brutal as hell, man. If you got a schedule where you're having to go to Athens, and then you have to go to Tuscaloosa, and then you have to go to the Baton Rouge, and you have to go to the Swamp, like that's fucking insane, man. That's insane. That's 4 losses almost guaranteed.
Yeah,
that's brutal trying to play in those environments. Let's go ahead and take a very, very fast look, and then we're going to dive into our showcase segment, because we're already starting to run a little over on time here. Let's talk about a little bit of NFL.
Yeah.
Buffalo gets the win over the Rams, 31-10. Let me just tell you, man, LA did not look like the defending Super Bowl champions in that game.
No.
Josh Allen is just a beast, dude. He's like he is guaranteed that he's and I don't know how I would rank him, but I don't know where I would put 1 and 2 at. But Josh Allen's in the top 3 quarterbacks in the NFL, in my opinion.
The way the Chiefs and Bills game ended last year, firstly, I should say, I would have rather it had been for the AFC Championship. I think it would have added more spice to the layer. But yeah, you're right. That game was very, very impressive, and I honestly wasn't giving Buffalo a lot of love, but I have to respect that after this week because they made the Rams look like not even a junior league team, like a JV team in high school. And I mean, you got Aaron Donald, Jalen Ramsey, all these phenomenal defensive pieces. Allen Robinson came in. He had 2 yards in fantasy or 2 points in fantasy. That's like,
a lot of people's fantasies got screwed up this week.
yeah.
The way things went down. You had Miami end up getting the win 20-7 over New England, which is shocking.
That's huge, yeah, for them.
Of course, Jets doing Jets things. They lose to Baltimore 24-9. It's kind of weird. Let's take a quick second to acknowledge that Lamar Jackson is not probably going to re-sign with Baltimore after this season.
You actually mentioned that to me last night, and I was. You can throw your idea out there if you want, or if you want to set on it for a few weeks. That's cool.
I still think he's going to Seattle.
I said, where was it?
Seattle fans can beat their chest if they want to. Geno is not a fucking playoff quarterback.
I've seen that. I've seen that, unfortunately, at Milan Puskar Field. I got to see him play Kansas State live, and this was during the Heisman Trophy battle between he and, oh God, what was the dude's name? It wasn't Calvin Klein, but it was something like that. I mean, dude never played in the NFL. And he destroyed Geno. He had Lockett, of course, I'm like, oh, we're going to kill Kansas State. They ain't got a chance. We was down like 30-7 at halftime. It was ridiculous. We left pretty much as soon as the third quarter started because they just kept laying points. It was like 50-something to 14 was the final. And Geno, that was a big game for them last night. Of course, Russ's homecoming, but I hope the best for him. But that's a good landing spot. I said the Colts, by the way. I'd like to see Lamar in the Colts. As long as he ain't in the AFC North. I don't care.
Pittsburgh gets a win 23-20 over Cincinnati. Also, Indiana and Houston tie, final overtime. Let's talk about this also because it seems that Indiana is going to let Blankenship, their kicker, go, which is just fucking stupid. He's one of the best kickers in the league. I know he choked out there, but do you find it? And I brought this up to the old lady too. Like, it's kind of odd. You don't usually see kickers get fired over like the first week or two of football. But that was very odd, and especially as good as a kicker as he is.
Georgia boy,
Georgia boy, yeah.
For that national championship kind of core.
Maybe he's just done so bad and I just not noticed because I don't watch a whole lot of Indiana football. But I thought he was a pretty good kicker for a while.
I mean, we're just going into week 2 also. You got to look at kicking any play. Obviously, there's a lot of teeter-tottering, but it's almost like you got to get a rhythm for it, man. It's like I'm not trying to make it sound easy or hard, but it's just repetition. Mm-hmm. That's why if a kicker misses one in a game, he could miss 3 because his head's not all the way in it. The old classic announcer's curse usually. Oh, he's 45 for 45. He's gonna miss. Okay, so that's very commonplace. I would hang on for a couple weeks, but that's crazy that they're already thinking about or already letting Blankenship go, like you said. Or that's sad, man. To be honest, for him, he'll
good days in Washington. They get a win over Jacksonville.
Yep.
Chicago wins over San Francisco 19-10. If you watched that game, it was in the rain. It was a pretty decent game. Yeah. Also, Philadelphia beats Detroit. Detroit hangs 35 points and still can't get a damn win. 38-35 of Detroit. Also, you had New Orleans, who gets the win over Atlanta, 27-26. Cleveland beats Carolina. Bakerfield don't get to get the revenge on his ex-team. The New York Giants beat Tennessee 21-20.
Another shocker right there. Yeah. Ask me.
Clippers win. I mean, Clippers. Shit, the Chargers win 24-19 over Las Vegas. Also, Minnesota gets a big win over Green Bay, 23-7 in Minnesota. I bet you love that shit, man.
Yeah. That I think that shows a couple things. Green Bay and Devontae both do. I mean, it's only week 1 again, but Devontae's not going to put the same numbers up. I say that, and he had a monster game. But he ain't got Aaron Rodgers throwing to him. He's got Derek Carr, who had 3 interceptions, and Aaron Rodgers played not Aaron Rodgers like, with a lot of young receivers. And then he's got Sammy Watkins thrown in there. So it may be a long season for Green Bay. I think they'll eventually get the hang of it. And I think the Raiders will too. But right now, they're definitely, neither team look playoff worthy. Minnesota looked fantastic with that new coach, getting Justin Jefferson all the yards he had. He did phenomenal. Just a whole different culture. It's like a culture change up there in Minnesota. So
I'll tell you who did look playoff worthy, and that was those Chiefs, 44-21 over Arizona. Also, Tampa Bay whips the dog shit out of the old Dallas, 19-3. And the big controversial game that a lot of people talked about all week, the Denver and Seattle game, 16-17. Seattle gets the win. Coach says that they're not paying Wilson all that money to send a kicker out. So no, that was
he said that. I haven't watched anything.
Yeah,
of that. I watched.
I think it's kind of stupid because I think at the end of the day you go for the win. If a kick's going to get you the win, then
do it. Yeah, absolutely.
Fucking do it. We're going to take a quick commercial break, and we come back. We'll get to our throwback segment, which is "I Hate You More," the Lakers and the Boston rivalry. We'll be right back.
Sacrifice it all for it. My soul still stirs, and I still burn. Even when they think I'm at my end, I get up again. I still burn. Every time the fire floods these veins, oh, it never fades. I still burn. I go on and on. I go on and on. I still burn. I go on and on. I go on and
That is Revolution. You can find us on the Facebook page, Fantasy Roleplay Wrestling for Real Wrestling Belts.
Very cool.
That is our pay-per-view that is coming up this Saturday. We'll also have another one that's coming up in October on Halloween called Paranoid. Yeah. All right, let's go. All right, let's go ahead and jump into this. It is that time. The throwback segment. Every time I have to play that video, costs us $9.99.
I was gonna say we shell out the big bucks here at the
big dollars for sports hounds. Everybody knows a little bit about if you've ever watched the NBA, you know all about the Boston and the Lakers rivalry. It's never stopped. It goes all the way back to the '60s.
Mm-hmm.
It's never stopped. My generations went through it. My grandpa's generation went through it. I mean, pretty much. I mean, when you look at it from that standpoint. Before we dive into all this, who is your favorite Celtic and who is your favorite Laker?
Me personally, my favorite Celtic would have to be, even though I didn't get to watch them live, of course, back then, would be Larry Legend and Larry Bird. And there's a couple in there, man. There's so many Hall of Famers between both teams. Lakers, I would have to say the man I'm rolling with that I actually got to see would be Kobe. Just for the fact that he's Kobe Bryant, he's on a different level. But those would be my two. If I had to pick another one, of course, it would be Jerry West, being, not too far away from where he grew up at in Cabin Creek. Who's yours, Tommy?
Oh, it's a hard one because I really love.
Man, there's so many.
I really love Larry Bird. Like Larry Bird's a shit, man. But I'm one of those ones that watched Larry because I'm old enough. I was born in '84, but by the time I was watching Larry, it was the early '90s. Yeah. So I didn't get to see Larry in his prime.
On his way out. Yeah.
Yeah, I got to see him on his way out. So I'm not going to pick Larry. I'm going to pick someone that I actually got to watch at the Celtics for a lot of years, and that was Paul Pierce. Okay. Paul Pierce is probably the guy that got me watching the Celtics a lot, just because he was so clutch back in his prime. If you're looking at the Lakers, it's kind of the same thing. They're so fucking meany. I know Kobe's the easy answer, and I love Kobe Bryant, but that's probably who I would have to go with if we're going to look at it from the standpoint of who I watched growing up. But I won't go with Kobe Bryant this go around because you went with Kobe. So I'll pick someone else, and it's someone else I like, and I've always thought, and I love his personality and just him as a human being. That's Magic Johnson. Magic was the shit, man. I love the way the guy could pass the ball. And that's what I always say too when people bring up how LeBron James and they compare him to Michael Jordan so much. I've never seen LeBron James as Michael. I always seen LeBron as Magic.
Yeah,
like his play style, the way he passes and the way he used to pass. He don't pass like as good as he used to anymore. But back in the day, LeBron used to do these fucking killer passes, these behind the head passes, and these and I always seen like Magic in him. I never seen Jordan in him.
Magic too is a great comparison. He's like a 6'9" point guard. That's something, especially for the late '70s, early '80s, and the time frame that he would play in. He and Larry both. You didn't see that. You don't see many 6'9" guards now, and we're very low. It's a big league now, but there ain't no 6'9" point guards walking around. Magic is a great answer, and honestly, I would, if I had to pick someone else, it would probably be Shaq. But again, guys that I watch with the Lakers, Magic definitely makes the list. He transformed the way a lot of people play and approach the game, and I think LeBron's a perfect example. Honestly, if Magic's career is not cut short with obviously HIV, he had to quit.
That happens when you're game banging cheerleaders.
Like every night.
According to their stories, that shit was going on during the halftime.
Oh, it wouldn't surprise me. They have the show out there, and I don't know how accurate it is. Some stuff's like Chick Hearn. Nobody wants to believe Chick, and I don't think Chick Hearn was the way he's portrayed in the show, the great broadcaster of LA Lakers for several years. But like, man, it's a little historically inaccurate, but it's a big party. Like, there's all kinds of, you're like, man, this is the Lakers, or are we sure we're not watching?
Could you imagine? I mean, it's fucking LA, man.
Hollywood, baby. Hollywood.
Yeah, I mean, you're in LA.
In that time period, too. You mentioned it. There's so many guys we could have said between both teams. There's a lot. You said Paul Pierce. If I had to pick somebody that I actually got to watch play for Boston, it might be Kevin Garnett, part of that big three. It's funny. I was watching He Got Game last night. Jesus Shuttlesworth, Ray Allen. So classic movie. And I was actually thinking, I was like, I know this is an old movie. I think it's 1998, 1999. Ray Allen looks so young, and just in a few years, when you think about it, 8 years ain't that far off, but he was getting ready to be a part of the big three 8 years from now. So, I mean, it was crazy watching that, and of course, loved the movie. But Boston, man, there's folklore. Celtic pride versus Showtime Lakers. There you go. And that's the thing I looked up. They actually the blue collar kind of get it, grind it out, Larry Bird approach that was in the 80s with Showtime, a little panache and pizzazz and in your face, these passes like you mentioned Magic did. That was the first kind of marketing gig, other than, of course, earlier you mentioned 60s. I think 68. Let's see, I wrote down a few little tidbits. 68, we had the Celtics in the 60s, during the 60s, I should say. They won 8 championships in the 60s, 8 of them, and like 5 or 6 of them were against the LA Lakers.
Yeah.
I think the only other team to win during the 60s beat the Lakers out, and I think it was Philly, but it wasn't the 76. It was Philadelphia Warriors or whatever it was at that time, the team Wilt came from. And I would say those two guys, Wilt Chamberlain and Bill Russell, were two guys the league needed back then to put on the performances they did. I mean, obviously, Wilt, 100-point game, several records for the Warriors, the Philadelphia Warriors, I should say. Now they're Golden State, and we have the 76ers.
They credit Larry and Magic for saving it.
And yeah, there were years there, Boston. I honestly think, and I put down in the 70s, that's kind of when both teams would struggle a little bit, but we were on a dynasty build. My Knicks haven't won since, but 3 years in a row we played the Lakers, beat them 2 out of 3 times. And a few years later, let's see, 74 and 76, the Boston Celtics win with Dave Cowens, JoJo White, and Paul Silas. So here's what I like about Boston. They kept everything within the family. You know, Red Auerbach, the first coach, the most prominent coach. Bill Russell would eventually coach. Let's see, what's my guy's name? Casey Jones would eventually coach in the 80s, and that's when this battle was crazy. And you mentioned Bird and Magic. They were so marketable, and everybody was into this game. I think that national championship was 79. So Larry Bird and Magic Johnson are coming into the league as rivals already. You know, Indiana State, Michigan State, and to just hold that kind of animosity for the two teams. They get drafted to the two teams. One's obviously had the other's number for so long, but what a great way to tell a story. You know, that college rivalry actually turned into a better NBA rivalry, a better professional rivalry, I would say. And I think it's just cool for that fact, because you don't get to hear that much. We don't have any, oh, hey, Tom Brady versus whoever Ohio State's quarterback was in 97. I don't
Right.
Yeah. But with Larry and Magic, we get to live that a little bit, and we can go back on YouTube and watch it, of course. But yeah, they are credited. I would credit Magic and Larry both with all these sponsorship deals. And you mentioned Magic's that smile, man. Ladies obviously loved it. He was just so marketable. Both guys would be. They did save the league. I don't think we get guys like Michael Jordan. Isaiah Thomas was obviously part of that with the Bad Boys. LeBron James much later on. In the 80s, if we don't have Magic and Larry, we might not have an NBA. You know, we might be playing these smaller colleges, might be the only other form of basketball we're getting to watch. So I would credit Magic and Larry for saving the NBA. Yes, exactly what you said. We talked about that a little bit earlier, too.
I got a little small video here. Speaking of YouTube.
I think the Celtics will use most of the clock here. Nearly a steal by Worthy. Dennis Johnson with Cooper all over him. He can't do a thing. Bird, turnaround, hit.
with 16 to go, and the Lakers call their last, although they have one more, they call a timeout.
Got it. He didn't shoot it. 5 seconds left. Magic down the middle, just what I thought. A hook shot at 12. Good!
Here's Magic, off the mark. Lakers had several chances, and here's Larry Bird chugging down the court. Fakes, low about. Magic gets inside the basket, counts it a foul. And a
great pass. That was a great pass to Kareem.
Bird against 3 Lakers. Cooper and Cooper to Magic.
But this is the first two out they had all year, and they wanted to look good in front of the crowd, and they did. So, we're just looking for
penalty with nearly 3:50 to go. Basket good, and a foul.
Here's Bird against Magic Johnson in a low post. Magic has trouble guarding people down there too, and Bird.
Great anticipation by Bird to DJ. He's got an easy one. So the Celtics have come back twice. Bird, double. Dennis Johnson, 2 seconds. It's good. The game is over. Magic.
Had the ball, and they were going to take off on a fast break.
Larry Bird to Parrott.
Magic's got a chance to go the distance with a hook of 6. He got it. Magic.
Parrott. The other side. Bird gets the basket. They give it to Magic. He's got Cooper on his right. Timed perfectly. The pass was timed perfectly. The basket counts and a foul, and that's all that was.
That's an outstanding play by Magic Johnson.
And the Celtic bench is up, and a steal by Bird. Larry Bird finds Dennis Johnson, who's open.
That Larry to Dennis Johnson, that's one of the most famous passes, too. I mean, that's crazy. That was like mid-'80s. That shows you how much of an influence both guys were on the game. Larry as a three-point shooter, just as a player.
We usually also have way better videos than that, but I didn't want to dive too well. I didn't want to dive too much into Larry or Magic, because I feel like that's a whole episode in itself.
Yeah, it really is.
Because I got a bunch of good clips on Larry I could watch over and over and over and over, because Larry was one of the biggest shit talkers in the game.
Yes, one of the best. Yeah,
one of the best shit talkers. The French lick from
the hick
from French lick. Yeah,
I would probably say Larry may be the greatest in all of sports with trash talking, because he would tell you what he was going to do. There was one, I forget who the player was now, but he was like, "Oh, you're going to be guarding me," and the guy was like, "Yeah, I'm on you tonight." It was John Sally, actually, Detroit Pistons forward, I believe forward center. And he was like, "Well, Sally, come on, man. I think you need to double me." And he's like, "Nah, I got you." And that's the bad boy. This bad boy Pistons, they elbow you in the throat. They didn't care. And he's
that's
like,
the thing about Larry, though. Larry would throw hands.
Yeah, he would. And he would get, he was easily hateable. I almost said easily hateable, and I think vice versa for Magic. That smile, nobody in Boston cared for that. But the list goes on and on and on and on. Dennis Johnson mentioned, Robert Parrish, Danny Ainge, of course, which is with Utah now and actually helped form the Big Three. That you
what was it the story that Barkley told, where he got mad at Barkley and them, and Barkley said, "I can't remember who was guarding him." He says, "When I played for the Sixers," and he looked at Barkley. He said he kept having this attitude, and I was like, "What is wrong with you, Larry?" And he's like, "I'm mad at y'all. Y'all are disrespecting me." He said, "What do you mean disrespecting?" He's like, "Y'all put a white guy on me to guard me." And he's like, "You disrespecting my game. You're not taking me serious." It's like, he go over and say shit to the coaches, like, "You got anybody on that bench you can guard me?" And they just like, "No."
You're stuck tonight. You're going on another championship run. No, you're right. Just those two alone, you could talk a whole episode about and all the various accolades.
I love Dominic Wilkins' story. It's like he said he was a rookie, and said he was guarding Larry, And Larry like throws it down. It's like I'm gonna be putting points on you all night. He's like, I was just like, oh my god, you're so confident.
Yeah.
He's like, yeah. He's like, you don't even blow in this league, Holmes. So wait a minute, did that son bitch just call me Holmes?
That's hilarious, man. I wonder what I mean, because again, from college, Larry and Magic. Can you imagine?
Larry would go down to the courts in the hood and play ball.
Yeah.
That's how Larry learned how to play ball. Larry didn't play. He left Indiana and went to Indiana State.
There's a guy on the Grueling Truth. He runs like it's a network podcast. They basically talk a lot of stuff we're talking now, but a lot of boxing, baseball, NASCAR, current events and sports stuff like this. And he actually played at Indiana State with Larry Bird's brother. I forget his name, but Larry comes to Indy. We had this conversation. This is a crazy story. Larry comes to the practice. You know, he didn't have anything better to do. He's a Boston Celtic at the time, but he comes to Indiana State, and they're like, I think that was a regular thing, so nobody was really starstruck. You know, they were pretty much used to Larry coming there, and they're doing like 5-on-5 pickup, and he's like, first 21 wins, we'll give y'all 18 points, and he comes back and beat them 21-19. Or he might have let him score 15 or 18. It might have been that. He lets him score 15 points. He didn't do anything. And then he's like, okay, give me the ball. And he pretty much single-handedly touched it. He beat him by himself. And I'm like, yeah, I've heard so many stories. But he was like, oh, it was incredible to see. And he would just do that stuff. And then you would hear his trash talk on the court, and you would see how good he was. I'm going to go to that spot and make it. I'm going to kiss your mama or whatever. He didn't say that, but I'm just saying that was just Larry Bird for you. And very cool.
There was one story where he literally said off a commentator, off the referee or some shit, and he like bounces it like somehow, and he ends up fucking bouncing it off the referee somehow, and it goes in or some shit. Just nonsense. Well, do not forget, while we're on the subject, let's go ahead and talk about next shows that are coming up. We got some really good ones that are coming up. Next week's is the episode 11, the Miracle on Ice, the USA versus the USSR Russia, the 1980s and Winter Games. This game has people's wondering why the hell we're talking about a game, an 80s game that went down. You probably do not know sports history enough. This was a very big game. There was a lot of things online, also political. Also, we're going to dive into that. And then the week after that, we have one of my favorite episodes that is coming up, episode 12, Bo Knows Greatness. Everything about Bo Jackson, and me being an Auburn fan and a huge Bo Jackson fan. That one's
Bo is your guy there, right? I mean, he is Auburn University. Again, that's pretty cool. He could do everything.
I mean, he does so much like cool shit too. Like he does that Bo Bikes Bama stuff, and he would ride like through our small town and stuff on his bike and shit. He would stop and talk to people, and that's just how Bo is. He's very down to earth.
Ain't he like we've talked about this before, like he and Herschel Walker both, they're very similar except for Herschel, and not to make fun of Herschel, he's got the multiple personality disorder, but we talked about that during our top 10 greatest college football players, or running backs, I think it was.
Running backs.
Anyway, that's a good one to go check out if you guys want to go put your own top 10 list up against mine and Tommy's. But Bo is like a big avid outdoorsman, hunter, fisherman. Like you'll see him. I think on his ESPN kind of short film or whatever it was. You don't know Bo. He's sitting there shooting a bow. You know, He's just regular guy. This dude that was in the NFL, played in the MLB.
They said he shoots that shit with his feet.
I mean, this is like.
I swear that there's a story.
No, I've heard that.
They come in after his hip surgery, and he's popping bullseyes, shooting with his feet.
These guys are almost like Greek godlike that we hear the stories back then. Achilles who couldn't be killed in.
Well, that's the thing that Bo was kind of known for, is like he's the last, Paul Bunyan, type figure.
Yeah.
Like he's the last one left. Like, because there's so many of these stories that you're like, how the hell is that possible? But like that one dude points out, like on the documentary, he's like, I heard that he was on a court and he was like in the 6th grade and he dunked a stick. And then you're just like, that sounds very made up, but then why the hell would they make it up that he dunked a stick? They would have said he dunked the ball if that was the case. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't get it either. That's going to be interesting, though.
And I laugh at that because I'm just like, yeah, I could just see that happening on some redneck playground. They didn't have a ball. Someone's like, he's like, I bet you I could dunk. Well, you ain't got it. Well, I got this stick. I'll dunk this stick. Because you know how kids are. I could see that scenario totally
Absolutely.
going down.
Absolutely.
Totally going down. Now, before school, there ain't no basketball out there. They're just out there goofing off, whatever, before they go into school.
Y'all want 2 hands or 1 on this? I'm going to tomahawk it.
I'm going to tomahawk it.
Yeah.
Like he said, what was the one story they told? Like he killed a bunch of neighbors, preachers' pigs, and then ran away and then jumped a 40-foot ditch to get away. A 40-foot ditch? Like, what the fuck?
That's another thing, too. I mean, that's unreal, but I don't think that can happen in modern times. That was only a specific, nowadays, and I'm not, that just things have changed so much with recruiting, with the way people take care of their bodies and the technology that goes into everything. I mean, we're doing this podcast 25 years ago. This was something made up, I can't talk to somebody in Alabama on a phone where I can see them, and now it's very real. And you hear about Bo and the pigs, or Bo and the bow and arrows, or just Bo telling Bear Bryant no. I'm not going to go to Alabama and play. I'm not going to be third wheel, Nope. I'll be at Auburn. That's fantastic. I'm ready for that because he is one of the most dynamic athletes in the history of sports, I feel like.
I agree. Well, guys, thank you for joining. We're going to go ahead and wrap it on up. Make sure to join us next week, where we'll probably be running on Tuesdays from here on out. We're going to kind of take a step away from Mondays. One of the reasons why also is that Raw has got more interesting for some people, and they're starting to tune more into Raw. So we'll probably start going more on Tuesdays from here on out. It also gives me a day to get the show together from the weekend, because my weekends are usually so tight. And then next thing I know, it's like Monday, and I'm like, oh shit, I have not done nothing. And that's literally what happened. That's why we're running today on a Tuesday instead of on a Monday. So
yeah.
Well,
busy. We talked right before we come on.
It's been nuts for me too, man.
This last month and a half, man, just being able to.
If I'm not mistaken, let me look. Yeah, this one right here is the last set date, which will not take place on the 19th. It'll be on the 20th. Okay. This is the last set date. So these rest of the ones are not set. I don't have a date set on those. So those definitely can get moved around and stuff.
And again, Tuesday sounds like a better, just like you said, with football too. We got Monday Night Football that's coming back.
Monday Night Football.
Peyton and Eli, by the way, Tommy, if you haven't watched their telecast, they're on ESPN2. And then Joe Buck and Troy, I ain't knocking on them too. Troy Aikman's a little annoying to me. So I don't. Joe,
he can't be at times. He gets on my nerves a little bit too. Because there's just times I'm just like, dude, just shut up, man. He just says too much extra shit. He'll say something that sounds okay, but then he just keeps talking, and I'm like, Troy, shut up.
Yeah, let Joe do his thing. And Joe, phenomenal baseball. I mean, Jack Buck and Joe Buck, they're legendary where you're at, St. Louis. Mm-hmm. And it's almost like blasphemy to talk about Joe Buck, but he's phenomenal. And Troy, I can't say they're bad. I'm just saying, man, like you said, there's so many. Yours is Chris Collinsworth. You don't like Chris Collinsworth, right? There's so many people that don't like Chris Collinsworth. There's a lot of color commentator guys I can't stand, and I won't watch it. So Peyton and Eli, that was a party more than it was anything. But you're learning a lot of stuff. Peyton, of course, talking about the pre-snap count, the cadences, what the Broncos let Russell Wilson keep last night. It was very cool. In order to get his offense, especially for the first couple of weeks, going and be as comfortable as possible. And then you have Shannon Sharp, by the way, in the fourth quarter, who they're talking to, who is drinking on TV. And he's like, "Are you going to stay with us for overtime if we get there?" And he said, "Peyton, if we go to overtime, I'm down in this bottle." And I'm like, "Uh-oh, drunk Shannon. He's got to be on TV in the morning. Let's watch and see what." It was great, man. It was really, really good. So if you haven't watched Peyton and Eli, their Monday Night Football telecast, it's worth it. It's worth at least a halftime. Watch half of it, see if you like it.
Kick ass. All right, guys, we will see you next week.
Later on.
You ain't nothing but